All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm Darnell Hunt, Director of the Ralph J. Bunn Center for African American Studies and Professor of Sociology here at UCLA. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 24th Thurgood Marshall Lecture. This evening, of course, we honor a pioneer. We honor John W. Mack, a lifelong advocate for social justice and progressive change. He's been a leading light in the civil rights struggle for more than 5 decades. His lengthy tenure as president of the Los Angeles Urban League began in 1969, the same year that our center was founded. His 3+ decades at the helm of the LA Urban League was distinguished by his work to address many of the community issues our center-affiliated faculty have also studied over the years. I should note that 45 years ago today, on April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. This tragic event had a tremendous impact on the trajectory of the Black freedom struggle, particularly in the strategies that would be deployed to deal with the inequities that were left unscathed by the civil rights movement. Here in Los Angeles, at the helm of the LA Urban League, John Mack played an important leadership role in local efforts to empower Black communities. And this was critically important work, given the unique challenges emerging from the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. Tonight, of course, we are thrilled to welcome John Mack to UCLA and to the Bunn Center to deliver the 24th Thurgood Marshall Lecture on Law and Human Rights.
All right.
Before I move forward with the program, there are a number of acknowledgments I'd like to make. First of all, I'd like to recognize members of the Bunn Center advisory committees, the Faculty Advisory Committee, Community Advisory Committee, and the Student Advisory Committee. I'd like to also recognize M. Melinda Tucker, Vice Provost of the Institute of American Cultures. Claudia Mitchell Hernan, Vice Chancellor Emeritus, Graduate Studies, Dean, Graduate Division. Way back in the back, Danina Montero, Vice Chancellor, UCLA Office of Student Affairs. We also have some double duty here. We have Linda Tucker and Claudia Mitchell Hernan, who are also former directors of the Bunn Center. Jared Mims, District Director, Office of Assemblyperson Reginald Jones Sawyer. Darren Harris, District Director, Office of Assemblyperson Stephen Bradford. I saw him minutes ago, so he's here somewhere. Monique Earl, Deputy Mayor, Office of Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villagrosa. And we're also very fortunate this evening to have members of 2 very important families here. We have Derek Marshall, who's a member of the family that Thurgood Marshall, of course, is a part of. Derek Marshall. And we have Kenneth Robinson, who's a descendant of Ralph Bunch. Derek? Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Vice Provost of UCLA's Institute of American Culture, M. Melinda Tucker, who will provide university welcome. M. Melinda Tucker has served as Vice Provost of the Institute of American Culture since 2011. She is also Professor of Psychiatry and Biobehavioral Sciences and a Faculty Associate of the Bunn Center. Tucker has enjoyed a long history of administrative service here at UCLA, including that of Associate Dean in the Graduate Division from 2007 to 2011, and Director of what was then the Center for Afro-American Studies from 1989 to 1991. She is widely known for her scholarly research on the social and psychological correlates of family formation, behaviors and attitudes, and the decline of marriage among African Americans. Vice Provost Linda Tucker.
It is my very distinct honor to provide the university welcome, to welcome you to the 24th Thurgood Marshall Lecture on law and human rights. Now, Darnell did tell you a little bit about my history, so I've been privileged to be a member of the center when this whole series was launched. And I was privileged to be here for all but a very few of those lectures. Memories that will be in my mind forever include being the chauffeur for Constance Baker Motley, who certainly should have been on the Supreme Court, as many of us know. This lecture hasn't been held every year, and we've counted 24 of them, so you know that I've been here more than a few years. The Thurgood Marshall series, in my view, is the signature moment on the Bunch Center calendar. It's where we honor the work and the dedication of our most significant leaders, our civil rights activists, and human rights scholars. And Darnell already mentioned that today has tremendous significance, the 45th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King. But the date stands as a reminder of the risk taken by every one of the people we've honored with this award, and the courage it really takes to make meaningful change. These extraordinary individuals have, of course, changed the nation, they've changed our society, but they have benefited every single individual in this room. So I welcome each and every one of you as we celebrate the legacy of Thurgood Marshall and the remarkable contributions of John W. Mack. Earlier in the day, someone described Mr. Mack as our own Martin Luther King for Southern California. And I don't think there's a more appropriate description of Mr. Mack. Thank you, and I welcome all of you.
Thank you, Vice Provost Linda Tucker. Now it's my pleasure to bring to the podium an important colleague and friend, Vice Chancellor Emeritus, Mitchell Hernan. It has become a custom for us to ask her to speak briefly each year about the background of the Thurgood Marshall Lecture Series. Dr. Mitchell Hernan, of course, was director of the Bunch Center for African American Studies, well, the Center for African American Studies became the Bunch Center, when the lecture series was inaugurated in 1987. Dr. Mitchell Hernan.
Thank you, Darnell, and good afternoon. In 1987, when distinguished jurist and professor Leon Higginbotham delivered the inaugural Thurgood Marshall Lecture on Law and Human Rights, the Center for African American Studies, of which I then served as director, had been in existence less than 20 years. It is a pleasure to note that we are now in our 5th decade. Then as now, as we honor Thurgood Marshall, we were also keenly aware of the extraordinary legacy of activism we had been bequeathed. Justice Marshall would remain on the court for another 4 years, but by that time, many of his major accomplishments were already the stuff of history. 20 years earlier, in 1967, Marshall became the first African American to serve on the U.S. Supreme Court. On that bench, he compiled a sterling record of judicial wisdom and social consciousness, setting forth well-reasoned views on civil rights protections, abortion, and the death penalty, often in dissent with the court's majority. Marshall stood then and now as a symbol of the great 20th century struggle to use the judicial system in the battle for civil rights, to turn a system of oppression into a mechanism of liberation. From 1940 to 1961, Thurgood Marshall was legal director of the NAACP during its successful battle against laws imposing racial segregation. Cases, he argued, resulted in the overthrow of the South's white primaries and other racially restricted covenants. it seems relevant in this institution of higher learning to underscore the work that he did in education, first focusing on graduate and professional schools and later on elementary and high schools, resulting in improved access to education for African Americans. When Marshall retired in 1991, the bench lost a great jurist and the cause of social justice lost a powerful advocate. When young Thurgood Marshall gave up his plan to become a dentist and headed to law school, inequality for African Americans was a fact of life in this country, and segregation was supported by the force of law, particularly in the South, where African Americans still went to separate schools, drank from different water fountains, stayed in separate hotels, and sat in designated seats on the back of the bus. Like Ralph Brunch, in whose honor and memory this center was rededicated in 2003, Marshall came of age in an America that was still, in many respects, an apartheid society. Marshall, like Bunch, was a visionary of great determination, and both of these men recognized that education was an essential battlefield in the struggle for inclusion. Indeed, we cannot afford to lose sight of the fact that education maintains its centrality in the centuries-old war against inequality. When Professor Henry McGee, who was my predecessor as director of UCLA's Center for Afro-American Studies, proposed the idea of this series, we could already view Marshall's achievements through the lens of time. Brown versus the Board of Education remained a milestone in the struggle for civil rights. But by that time, we fully recognize that segregation is not ended when laws supporting it are destroyed. Nor does the end of segregation necessarily mean that equity will prevail. We now also recognize that the ebb and flow of judicial decisions can erase legal bulwarks against racism as if they were just so many sandcastles. Though we have witnessed the law run against the forces of inclusion and equity, it is well to remember that it may turn again. The importance of Thurgood Marshall's victories remain far more powerful than any recent setbacks. As we continue to celebrate his extraordinary achievements through this lecture series, we can never afford to neglect his courage as his enduring gift to us, and that is hope. It was not a blind hope, but a kind of hope that sets an example, one which urges us to put our shoulders to the wheel and confront the forces of inequality where we find them. If the ground must be taken inch by inch, it must be taken and lost and taken once again, then our courage will need to be the fuel provided by our hopes and our dreams. Marshall's life and career show us how this is done. This evening, we are most privileged to be able to hear from another role model, John Mack, who will present the 24th Thurgood Marshall Lecture. His reputation goes before him as past president of the Los Angeles Urban League and more recently vice president of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. You will hear more about him and his contributions in the introductions to follow. John Mack has earned his place within the illustrious pantheon of African American heroes who have helped to propel the struggle for social and economic justice forward. His presence here this evening to deliver the Marshall Lecture is both a tribute to his own estimable achievements and a wonderful reminder of the mission of the Bunch Center, not simply to produce and transmit knowledge, but to use knowledge to make a difference. I join in welcoming Mr. Mack this evening and in thanking him for the civic leadership of which we are all beneficiaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Emeritus. Pleasure to court. Okay, to set the stage for our honoree tonight, I'd like to take a few moments to briefly review a list of luminaries who have delivered our Thurgood Marshall Lecture in years past. Okay, it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our speaker tonight, John W. Mack. John W. Mack was appointed to the Board of Police Commissioners by Mayor Antonio R. Villaraigosa in August of 2005. He held the position of President of the Police Commission for 2 consecutive years, and then the position of Vice President for 2 years. In 2009, he was re-elected to the President post and served for 2 years. In 2011, he was again elected to the Vice President post. Mack served as President of the Los Angeles Urban League from August of 1969 until his retirement in 2005. He began his career with Urban League in Flint, Michigan in 1964 and was appointed Executive Director in 1965. Prior to heading to Los Angeles Urban League, he served on the Urban League's national staff for 6 months during the Whitney Young era in Washington. Mack was a leader in the 1960 Student Civil Rights Movement in Atlanta and co-founder and vice chairperson of the Committee on the Appeal for Human Rights. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Applied Sociology from North Carolina A&T State University. He holds a master's degree from Clark Atlanta University. In 2006, Commissioner Mack was awarded an honorary Doctor of Management degree from the Claremont Graduate University School of Education. And in 2011, he was conferred an honorary degree, Doctor of Humane Letters degree by the California State University Board of Trustees at California State University, Los Angeles. During his tenure, the Los Angeles Urban League became one of the most successful nonprofit community organizations in Los Angeles with an annual budget of $25 million. The Los Angeles Urban League served over 100,000 individuals each year and operates a number of innovative, results-oriented job training, job placement, education, academic tutorial, youth achievement, and business development programs serving African Americans and other people of color, utilizing state-of-the-art computer technology, preparing League constituents for the 21st century. In 1997, United Way presented its Agency of the Year Award to the Los Angeles Urban League. Mack is a highly respected advocate for equal opportunities in education, law enforcement, and economic empowerment for African Americans and other minorities, and a bridge builder across all racial, cultural, economic, gender, and religious lines. John Mack.
Thank you so very much, Darnell. I'm indeed privileged and deeply honored to have been selected to deliver the 24th Thurgood Marshall Lecture. Before I begin, I see that my colleague and our newly elected, appointed President of the Los Angeles Urban League, Nolan Rollins, has just arrived to join us. Just please recognize him. I would say this while he's doing his thing. Nolan and I are close colleagues and friends for many years, and one bit of advice that I had given him, maybe he'll follow one day. As a new fellow in town, getting around in this town, allow yourself an additional 30 minutes to get lost time. I don't think he did that tonight. Because those of us who lived for a while, we know that the traffic is always unpredictable. But first of all, I'd like to commend Dr. Darnell Hunt and his colleagues at the Ralph Bunche Center for the outstanding work that you're doing. And I think we should give the center and Darnell Hunt a big round of applause. I feel truly and warmly welcome here. Spent a good part of the day here today. Had a wonderful lunch with a number of the Ralph Bunche, not only staff, but board members and supporters, and we had just an excellent exchange, sharing a lot of thoughts about a lot of things. And even though he wasn't able to stay, but Chancellor Gene Block also came out a little earlier, and read me, so I really feel welcome to the university. And while I was born and raised and educated in the South, I really feel a close affinity to UCLA because over the years, I've had various kinds of involvements, certainly fighting the battle against 209, going back during the Chuck Young era, and now being a member of the Board of Advisors, Dean Frank Gilliam's Luskin School of Public Affairs. So the relationship is strong. You know, I'm just really overwhelmed in so many ways over this honor as I look at the outstanding lineup of previous recipients, many of whom I know, and a number of whom I've had the privilege of working very closely with. And just, you know, when I think about Thurgood Marshall, who was the premier lawyer and jurist of the 21st century, they didn't get any better than Thurgood Marshall, which is just even more humbling. But as I looked at Leon Higginbotham, he should have been the successor to Thurgood Marshall. And of course, there were other people there who were going on to do great things. As was mentioned earlier, today, April 4th, is a troubling and disturbing reminder of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. of the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. One of the things that we talked about at lunch today, we went around the table and people were recalling where they were, what they were doing on that tragic day. And it's had an impact upon me that was very strong in several different ways. First of all, as a student in Atlanta, and one of the activists in the Atlanta Student Civil Rights Movement, along with Julian Bond, Marion Wright Edelman, and Otis Moss, and the list goes on and on, people who just have gone on to do incredible things throughout this nation. Dr. King had just returned from Montgomery to co-pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church with his father. My wife Harriet and I courted attending Ebenezer. Our student movement in Atlanta, which was comprised of representatives of the university complex, I think most of you are very familiar with. We had 3 representatives from each of the institutions. Atlanta, then it was Atlanta University, now it's Clark Atlanta, Morehouse, Spelman, Morris Brown, the Interdenominational Theological Seminary. We had 3 representatives each. And we came together. Some folks said it's the first time we'd ever gotten together on anything. But we came together to form the student movement fighting segregation, the right to be able to sit down at the lunch counter, to be able to buy a hot dog or a hamburger, the right to be able to go in the richest department store, and for our ladies to be able to try on the clothes they wanted to buy, or the men to be able to try on the clothes. I mean, just basic stuff. But to be able to hire, to have those places where we spend our money to hire. In any event, Dr. King and Whitney Young were our 2 closest advisors. Dr. Benjamin Mays, Morehouse at the time, and just the list goes on and on of people who were close to us. But the thing that stands out about Martin Luther King Jr. was that he had the ability to make you feel like you were the most important person in the world when you were involved in a one-on-one, small group kind of discussion. And both he and Whitney, I would describe as pragmatic ideas. It's great to be able to dream the big dreams, to have the great vision, but if one doesn't have the capacity and the leadership ability to be able to translate the idea, the vision into action. So they were what I would describe as pragmatic ideals. And then another sober reminder, on this day, 45 years ago, Dr. King, disciple of nonviolence, Prince of Peace, who abhorred violence, and who was, promoted peace throughout the world, was a victim of gun violence. And here we are today in America, and there's this raging debate over whether or not we should have gun control, to take some of these weapons out of the hands of people who are just killing people. I don't have to enumerate all of the recent tragedies that we're facing. And then we have a situation where there's a Congress, mainly Republicans and some Democrats, who are being held hostage by the NRA. So yes, that was then, and now this is today, what we are still facing. Having said that, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the march 50 years after. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, and Dr. King's memorable and historic speech, set in motion unprecedented civil rights progress in America. Dr. King's speech and the march ranked as one of the most important events in the history of our nation. The march and the speech propelled the civil rights movement, pricked the conscience of America, inspired and mobilized millions, and elevated America's #1 domestic problem, the issue of race, on the agenda of unfinished business that we continue to struggle with today. Dr. King was one of the most transformative leaders and figures of the 20th century, both in America and throughout the world. The March on Washington accomplished a number of things, but I think in so many ways it was a catalyst. It was the inspiration to get the attention of millions of American people, not just African Americans, but others. The March on Washington, combined with the Bloody Sunday March across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama, moved President Lyndon Baines Johnson and the Congress to enact the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which empowered African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, and the poor to exercise their right to vote, creating a powerful, diversified coalition of Americans who re-elected Barack Obama as our nation's first African American president to a second term, despite attempts to suppress the vote. And it's ironic that we have now challenges in the Supreme Court attempting to weaken the vote by numerous. There were many Republican governors of states in cahoots with their state legislators that passed oppressive legislation designed to suppress the African American vote and other people who they thought would vote for Barack Obama. And they're still operating in denial and wondering what hit them. That election was one of the most brilliant game-changing elections, the most in the history of America. Moving forward, future elections will be modeled after the Obama campaign. It was a masterful and brilliant campaign orchestrated by the president and his campaign advisors. Back to the march. A short period after the Great March, that of course talked about the Voting Rights Act, Whitney Young proposed the domestic Marshall Plan. Really, the thought being just as America had gone over and invested millions and millions and millions of dollars and totally helped to rebuild Europe, war-torn Europe, that in a similar fashion, urban America should be viewed in the same way, and there should be a similar kind of commitment made to rebuild the inner cities of urban America and in urban areas. And Whitney Young, who had developed a very effective relationship with Lyndon Johnson, presented this plan and many elements, some elements that people talk about now and take for granted of the Whitney Young Domestic Marshall Plan were incorporated in the war on poverty, such as Head Start, Medicare, Medicaid, and funding for job training and jobs. Much of that came from the Young Domestic Marshall Plan, which not a lot of people either know or some folks have forgotten. The momentum that the march provided in the civil rights movement resulted in affirmative action laws and policies in employment and education enacted, which resulted in more African Americans and students of color being admitted to colleges and universities throughout our nation. Not nearly enough. And of course, we all know the Prop 209 story. At UCLA and other institutions in our state were attempting to make feeble progress in getting a few more of our students into the UC system. There was this law passed which set us back considerably. And the conversation had a little earlier with the Chancellor. He indicated that while recognizing that we're going backwards over a period of several years at least, it seems like this year there's been some improvement in the numbers, in the admission of African American and Latino students, and that's encouraging news. But let me just suggest to you that while the opponents of affirmative action made the world in the public arena in such ways as 209 and of course similar pieces of legislation throughout many parts of this nation, there was some encouraging news. The private sector, frankly, I think, really stepped up ahead of the game. They discovered that, you know, you can do good and do well at the same time. That maybe they weren't just doing black folk a favor by hiring a few more or promoting a few more into positions of management and to some of the executive suites. You know, they started getting a little used to it, and it wasn't too bad. It wasn't like going to the dentist, you know, seeing Derek Marshall and, you know, having a root canal pulled. And I would argue, I would submit to you that the private sector, even though these laws have passed, in many ways undermining the whole affirmative action concept, I would submit to you that we would not have an Ursula Burns as CEO of Xerox today, or Ken Chenault as CEO of American Express, or Clarence Otis of Darden Restaurants, African Americans who are the CEOs of these corporations, and others who are in, you know, in key leadership and decision-making positions. Had it not been for the affirmative action laws, which provided impetus, and then they really became incorporated as good corporate practice and could see the benefit to the bottom line. So no, we don't have nearly as many as we ought to have, but at least we had more than we had 50 years ago, before the March on Washington. Now the Voting Rights Act has resulted in thousands and thousands of African Americans being elected at all levels, local, state, and federal. I've lost count. I mean, one time it was around 2,000 or 3,000, and you know, the number keeps growing. Being a part of the public policy-making apparatus of our the city level, the county level, state and federal. And beyond that, there's something else that is very important for us to keep in mind. There are a number of elected office holders who owe their election to support of the African American vote. Let's bring it home. The next mayor of Los Angeles, either Wendy Grewal or Eric Garcetti, will owe their election to, in large part, to the African American vote. So it's a tight election, close, and while the media, sometimes this irritates me, have tended to marginalize us, and even the pollsters tend to marginalize us. The reality is that while African Americans constitute 90% of the population, we represent 15% of the voting population. That's not an insignificant accomplishment. And there are other examples throughout this country in which we do have some influence in that regard. So, you know, it's not been, the news has not been all bad. But, you know, back to the election of President Obama, some folk thought us all over. That solved all of our problems. We got a black man in office now, he's the top man, so it's all over. You black folks stop complaining. But the reality is that disproportionate unemployment is still there. Poverty is still a major problem. Education, especially in the LAUSD, our youngsters are being miseducated all over the place, not being prepared to qualify for admission to UCLA and to other institutes of higher learning, or to be prepared for that workplace that is so changing, the 21st century workplace, which is a very different kind of environment. So we really still have a lot of work to do in that regard. Just a little bit about some of the experiences that I was privileged to have over the years in my tenure with the Urban League. We established the Milk and Youth Training Center that was really focused on working with our youngsters at elementary and middle school level. We had young people coming in after school, centers located on Crenshaw Boulevard, being tutored, being helped to improve their reading by 1 grade level in a 3-month period of time, their math within a 2 grade level in a similar period of time, and equally as important, exposing them to positive role models, people whom they could want to grow up to be like, alternatives to the gangbangers. And that, the work of that center, I'm very proud of. I mean, our staff just did an outstanding job, our volunteers did an outstanding job. And that is the kind of thing, it's one thing we can complain about the system and what they're not doing, but I always thought it was very important that we do what we needed to do in our community to make a positive difference. In the educational arena, Urban League, SCLC, and NACP came together in response, frankly, to a request from Diane Watson, Virgil Roberts, some others who were at that point fighting the Crawford case, the school desegregation case, and they needed to have a community coalition, and we established that group and devoted years and years. We talked earlier today, 7 o'clock in the morning, every Wednesday morning, for a long time at the League. I have to report to you, despite all of our best efforts, we still got a big problem. So that's I can't claim victory there, but at least that was a focus to make sure that the quality of education be improved for our young people. Another area, and this was perhaps the most challenging and difficult experience that I had, was LAPD. For decades, especially going back to the Darrell Gates era, LAPD was a brutal, racist institution that operated like an occupation force, particularly in the African American community. And we We fought, we protested. I mean, we had the Eula Love shooting, the chokehold incidents, where 22 young African American men were died as a result of the chokehold. And Darrell Gates said it because something was medically wrong with them. It had nothing to do with what the cops were doing to them. And the list goes on and on. Of course, the Rodney King incident was the most infamous and the one that gathered greatest attention. We had a coalition that really devoted the best of our lives, and most of our lives probably for a couple of years, challenging, demanding, and I would submit to you that today's LAPD is an example of institutional reform, and that an institution can change, but a lot of things have to cause that to happen. I always begin, to me, the most important milestone of that event of the King meeting was the first state trial where they acquitted the officers who were involved, and the civil unrest, and then Mayor Tom Bradley appointed Warren Christopher and the Christopher Commission. Christopher Commission came forth with a number of sweeping reform recommendations, moving forward, no police chief would serve more than a maximum of 10 years, 2 5-year terms, strengthening the role of the police commission, creating the office of Inspector General, and most important, the one thing that really made us jump for joy, calling for Darrell Gates to go. It was a long, protracted battle, but Christopher Commission set the table. Then we had a series of other events, the Rampart scandal, and as a result of the King event and the Rampart scandal, the consent decree, the federal consent decree, which provided us with additional leverage, I might add, and strengthened the role of the police commission, and to enlighten police chiefs, Bill Black, and now Charlie Beck, and a very active and aggressive police commission that demands oversight. Now that, frankly, I don't want you to think it's all doom and gloom. That's one of the success stories of an institution being reformed and changing that we should all be very proud of. As I think about the march and the 50 years that have followed, nationally and locally, undeniable progress has been made. However, Dr. King's dream is only partially fulfilled. We have our first African-American president, but that didn't automatically solve those problems. The birthers are still around. Unemployment remains disproportionately high. Education remains unequal. Homelessness is a problem, and the list goes on and on. But in spite of all of that, we have to remain optimistic. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. However difficult these challenges may be. 50 years after the march, Los Angeles is the new Ellis Island of America, and the pioneering experiment in democracy. We must recommit ourselves to complete the unfinished agenda of the march, the creation of a level playing field, and ensure that everyone, without regard to race, economic condition, gender, sexual orientation, or religion, is seated at the table of justice as full partners in our beautiful mosaic of diversity, in tradition of Thurgood Marshall and our other visionary leaders on whose shoulders we stand. As Dr. King stated so eloquently, and I quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Thank you very much.
Again, let's let's show our appreciation for John W Mack. Okay, I'd like to call to the podium two of our students, Jessica Rayside and Lawrence Turner. Jessica's Lawrence, okay, well, Lawrence. And I'd like to call Ms. Mack back to the stand floor. We have a special presentation here.
We just wanted to say on behalf of the students at UCLA, we wanted to thank you, and also everyone here, of course. We wanted to read you the plaque which states, the Ralph J. Bunche Center for the African American Studies at UCLA proudly presents this award to John Mack for his commitment to social change through public service and for delivering the keynote address for the 24th Thurgood Marshall Lecture on Law and Human Rights, April 4, 2013. Thank you.
I believe we also have another special presentation. Is there someone here representing the California Assembly? I'm sorry? You're that person? You have something to read? Yes, okay. One up.
Yes, good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. I feel like I'm coming back home, UCLA. In fact, Mr. Mack pretty much recognized me with and identified me with UCLA. I have to remind him, like Bert, Dr. Nelson out there and others, and Keith Parker, my former boss, always tell and out me and let people know that I'm actually great at USC. But I worked here 10 years, so everyone thinks I graduated from UCLA. I actually know more people at UCLA, I think, than I know at USC. But I also live on Bruin Street. The gods are messing with me. But it is my pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of my boss, Assembly Member Reggie Jones Sawyer, who cannot be here this evening because he is in Sacramento. They typically fly back on Thursday evening, so he's probably in flight. But and he knows John very well. They worked many years in the city of Los Angeles, and he was more than happy. And I should state one more business of protocol. This is actually the district of Assembly Member Holly Mitchell. So on behalf of her also, I'd like to present this certificate of recognition to Mr. John Mack in honor of him being selected the keynote speaker of the Thurgood Marshall Lecture Series on Law and Human Rights. And it is only fitting that it's been bestowed by the Ralph J. Bunche African American Studies Center at UCLA. Congratulations.
Okay, another Thurgood Marshall Lecture. Well, I'd like to thank the Bunche Center staff and all of those out there who worked diligently this year to help make tonight possible. And of course, I'd like to thank you all for spending your time with us this evening to come out to hear John Mack's inspirational speech. And I want you to stay in touch with what the center has going on, to visit our website, www.bunchecenter with an E, Bunche with an E, .ucla.edu, for all the events we have yet to occur this year, but also as a preview of events we'll have coming up next year as well. So once again, thank you for coming out. Drive safely and see you soon.
Good, so.